office and you've decided it's just not the best thing for you and your family. So how is it that we can take your skills and then build that into a career where you can have that in a remote fashion?
And are you finding that people are pretty open to this exploration, or is there still some resistance from what they feel they're most knowledgeable in?
Well, I think people are way more open now than they've almost ever been. I think the fear factor that sometimes people have is actually gone because based upon everything that we've gone through in the past year, people feel like you said, if we could do that, we could do just about anything, right? The other thing, just to talk about a little bit, is that women suffer incredibly from imposter syndrome. And not that men don't have it, but I'm going to talk about women for a second. I spoke to a HR professional, and she is an executive level HR professional. And I was talking to her about a job I heard about that she would be perfect for. All she could do was tell me the 18 reasons as to why she was not right for that job. And all I could do is give her 19 reasons as to why she's completely wrong. And it's just, sometimes we don't see ourselves as others may see us. And the fact of the matter is that woman had every ability to be able to do this job and absolutely rock it. And that's what you want to do. I mean, she will feel great in doing this job. But I find this so many times with women and imposter syndrome. I don't know if you guys have as well.
We definitely, and actually, Allison, I'm going to tee this up for you. She just wrote this great post about imposter syndrome. I feel like you can have like a really, because it's something that we've talked a lot about, especially as entrepreneurs. When we first started this journey a few years ago, we didn't know how to do Zoom. There was so much newness to our experience, which is really why we created Tuesday at 2 in the first place, because we wanted to be around other people that we could learn from. But that imposter syndrome is real, and something you try to really, I guess, honor, so it gets you more curious, ask questions to grow. But it is real.
So I'm going to counter that, by the way. I'm going to say that actually, I don't believe in the imposter syndrome anymore. And I'll tell you why. Is because no matter where you go, there you are. You are the same person, and you are the sum of your own experiences, and you are an expert on yourself and what you know. So when we explore and we want to grow, it's giving ourselves permission to do that. And that's what's important. So if we give ourselves an excuse, I'm not there yet, I'm not ready yet, that's all we're doing is holding ourselves back. We're giving ourselves negative self-talk instead of giving ourselves permission to be who we are, where we are, and then taking that step forward. So I don't believe in it as an excuse to be able to hold yourself back. And so you're never an imposter on who you are and the experiences that you have. If you don't feel like you have enough of the experiences, you should go out there and train yourself. But that doesn't mean you should stop and wait for the training to catch up to you before you take that next step. It's the continually moving forward while you're growing. Otherwise, I guess you're not growing.
So Allison, I have to say, as sisters, we talk every day. As business partners, we talk doubly every day. And I haven't heard that yet. So we really have used to talk about imposter syndromes fairly often. And I love that perspective. I think that's we're hearing it live on Tuesday at 2 for the first time. But it's so true. And how you expressed it is, it's a great perspective to kind of soften the fear-based that you might have about being an imposter. And Kerry, what are your thoughts when you heard Allison's viewpoint on that?
Well, I thought so many things. I think it's a great perspective. There were a couple of things that really super resonated with me. The word permission. And I love it that you use, we have to give ourselves permission. And we as women have to help other women to give them permission as well. I talk about this a lot in my discussions on a variety of topics, but remember, when you were a child, you needed permission to do certain things. When you went to school, you needed permission to go to the restroom. You needed a permission slip if you were going for an activity. So it's this whole permission thing that we've gotten used to in our lives. It's almost like just handing it over. I give you permission to do this. And I think that is huge. The other thing is for women, I always say, and you started really on this topic, if you're the smartest woman in the room, find a new room. And, so believe me, there are plenty of rooms that you can find. And if we could look at all of the positive things that this pandemic has created, it's created every type of opportunity for people to find their people, to find the people that they want to share with and learn from.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So I'd love to ask more about, so the nurse of HR is what I see you're branded as. Can you tell us more about your business and how you serve your clients?
Sure. So I actually started out, and the reason why I'm the nurse of HR, I started out as a registered nurse. And I worked as a nurse for a number of years in critical care and emergency departments. So I really had that experience of when you work in an emergency department, something is terribly urgent. And when I transitioned, or as I said, converted over to HR, I was always able to help my staff think about the fact that things that we were dealing with were actually really not urgent. Because when people have heart attacks, it's urgent. So I actually use a lot of my nursing premise in my consulting practice. So when I consult with a client, I will talk to them about assessing what their environment is, assessing what the problem is, and then trying to figure out to diagnose it, and then do different interventions, and then make sure that the treatment has worked. And so I utilize that, and I penned it because of the fact of the play on words with the fact that I am a nurse. So I work with companies, helping them as a fractional HR specialist is how I refer to myself. So I am a chief HR officer for a small to medium sized company. So generally it's a company that is either too small to have an HR practitioner at a higher level, or they have somebody who's just incredibly junior who needs somebody to develop them and help them grow. So I love the work that I do, and I love the variety. And it was a big leap for me to go from working in kind of hospital corporate to having my own consulting company. And I'm so happy I did it. And I just never look back and regret.
So how do you talked about the junior employee who needs mentorship. Let's talk about designing a mentorship program that helps someone be successful. How would you go about starting that? What would it look like? What would it feel like for the person who's involved?
Well, first of all, you have to find out who are the people who would like to be mentored. More importantly, who is the group that you really want to work on, who will mentor the others, right? So all of this is matching up. It is like being a matchmaker of a mentor and a mentee to make sure that you are connecting them and developing them together so that they're going to learn from one another. One of the things that people do often, and it's just kind of human nature, is to find somebody who is exactly like themselves, and that's who they use as their mentor. And I would challenge people, and I do challenge people, to find somebody who actually is really not like you, because they can look at things in a completely different way to help you, instead of somebody who is your mentor who just says, yes, Kerry, I agree with you. Yes, Kerry, I agree with you. That's not going to really help me to grow. I need somebody who's looking at it in a completely different way. So I like looking at the program and really understanding the groups of each and making sure that you're making that fine match.
And do you find that the role of the mentee, often they kind of come in, or describe the role of the mentee to make sure that's a successful, growth experience?
Well, first of all, you have to be open to learning, right? So you have to have somebody who is looking for support, looking for help, looking for whether or not they're a brand new employee in the organization, or maybe it's somebody who's moved and was promoted into a position and would like to have some support. So I think that is incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree. And I also feel like having kind of clear guidelines. So I was in a situation where I was the only female in a certain title. So I would mentor a lot of women. I did it because I loved it. And I had so many great women. But after a while, if she wasn't coming with an agenda, it was almost a burden on me that I didn't have the bandwidth to have 12 mentors plus my full-time vice president job. So she needed to have an agenda for me. So that was one thing that I kind of learned quickly. If somebody asked me to be their mentor, I would quickly be like, here are the rules of engagement.
Exactly. That's why I say the ground rules.
The ground
And
rules.
the ground rules. And the other thing is the time that you spend with it is to make sure that you're spending that time effectively. If a person doesn't come with their agenda, they're not prepared for the meeting, that really can be classified as a waste of your time. If your time isn't being used effectively, we all have so few minutes, or so it seems. And so to make sure that you make the best of it, that is the most important thing. And if I were you in that scenario, I probably would have reset those rules again to make sure that we're both singing from the same sheet of music.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's always nice to kind of reemphasize it, because people start to they go from formal to casual to too comfortable. And, the role, it's kind of a fine line. We're in the coaching space. So when I'm hired as a third party from a company as an executive coach, it's really clear.
Exactly.
I'm on the clock. I'm not on the team. Yeah, it's very clear. Yeah. As a mentor, establishing it's like I try to teach people that are now asking me, how do I do a mentorship within my company? And I try helping her learn what I learned. The difference between being a mentor to a coach was it was a bigger gap of learning for me than I had anticipated. And it's just because of the formality of it and the preparedness and the follow through. It's that blend of accountability and making sure she's owning it more than the coach.
Accountability and responsibility, really.
Yeah. So with your practice, what has been the biggest surprise of going out on your own, starting your own practice, being the fractional HR?
So this is kind of there's so many things that I have learned. It's incredible. But I never realized, I guess, how much there are HR issues. Sometimes in smaller companies have way more HR issues than you could possibly imagine. And I just didn't expect that. Not that I thought that they wouldn't have them, but I think that's kind of a fascinating thing. The other thing is, I'm just so amazed, and I don't know if you guys are really technology driven people. I can't say that I'm an early adopter, but the ability to find all of these special types of programs to help us in everything that we do, between sharing information or making sure that we have time saving, time tracking things, that I found really amazing. And I have a list of things, and then I share them with people who I deal with to try to help them in their practice every single day.
I do love how technology has made it easier to do a lot of things. And if you aren't that tech savvy, you just have to have a lot of more motivation that you'll figure it out. And they really are designing it nowadays to make it easier. So any favorite entrepreneurial technology that you kind of love to share with people that our members may enjoy? Oh, the Rocketbook.
Rocketbook. Does anybody use Rocketbook? That would be my question. So Rocketbook, when you were saying for the people who aren't all that tech savvy, Rocketbook I use to write all my notes when I have meetings with clients. And because I actually write faster than I type, and I want to focus on what the person is saying. And Rocketbook just helps you to save all that information and file it. I don't need to be doing anything. And on top of it, I'm saving paper. So it's such it's sustainable. So it's such a wonderful practice. Last week, I turned on a 26-year-old to Rocketbook, and I felt pretty cool about that.
That's what I call winning. So tell us more about Rocketbook. We did just have somebody share with us on a different speaker, and she's a business organizational specialist. So that's her whole realm is efficiency in the office. And she shared about Rocketbook, and I was pretty fascinated by it. But for those that are listening right now and joining this conversation, can you just share more?
Sure. So when you write notes on the paper in the Rocketbook, you actually have an app on your phone, and it's as though you're taking a picture of it. It can actually translate into typewritten document that then you can share as a file. So you just send it to yourself on email, and you can save it as a file so that you have that already done and you have everything that you've talked about documented. And one of the most important things in HR is documenting all your conversations. So especially if I'm doing, something that's a little bit more legal, like as an investigation, I have all those documents right there. So even for that reason, but it saves so much time by being able to do that.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a great tool. I did have a Rocketbook. It did not make it to my next home location. However, I did find it an interesting thing. Now, I have really bad handwriting, so it wasn't the smartest thing for me to do, but it was a great thought because I thought I could try it. But I do type faster than I write. So to me, it was easier for me to open up a keyboard. Now, I can't text as fast as I can type. That part is true. So I have to have a full keyboard. I can't do it on a little tiny screen.
I think I kind of have this feeling from back working in healthcare when computers really came, in vogue. Patients never like it that if you're listening to the patient and you're typing away, it was uncomfortable for them. But somehow if you were writing a document, it made them feel comfortable. So I find if I'm on a Zoom call with my clients, for example, I say to them, oh, I'm just writing notes. It doesn't faze them in the least. But if you hear the clicking, the typing, there's something about it. So it's really worked out well for me.
Great. Well, I'd love to ask you another question. In our introduction, we talked about your ability to create a team. And a lot of our members here, they're in that small to mid-sized company, from solopreneur to starting something. What advice do you have when they start hiring people, wanting to build a team, or even maybe if they join a mastermind or anything like that? What's kind of your advice around teamwork and instilling the right culture?
So first, depending upon whether or not they're building a team for an organization, if they're a startup, if you're a startup trying to figure out what the next best position is one of the most important things. So you might think the next position to hire in is a finance person or an HR person or a CFO, but really do that analysis to figure out what it is that you actually need for that next position. So that's very important. Number two, I mentioned it before, do not hire somebody who is exactly like you, because you are just going to get one school of thought and you won't be challenged in any way. I have done that with teams using such tools as like the DISC analysis to see, because it's really great if you can have a multifaceted team to make sure that in certain jobs, for example, if you have a job that's very detail oriented, you want somebody who is incredibly detail oriented doing that job, not somebody who is incredibly artistic, perhaps. So you have to make sure that you're filling the roles with the right people. So put the right people in the right seats, and make sure that you are spending lots and lots of time communicating. I don't think I can, underscore that enough. During the pandemic and the fact that people are remote, I use just the thought that leaders should be using double the amount of communication to anybody who is remote.
Yeah. And how about what do you feel like changes when you think about internal communications and double the communications if they're remote? What forum or what kind of techniques specifically for that person that might feel like they're on an island in the current situation?
Well, one of the things that, I've seen some companies struggle with, and they just didn't even see it, that it was happening. So sometimes you have somebody who is very outgoing and gregarious in the office, and all of a sudden you see over a period of time on Zoom that their personality has just changed. And so sometimes they're the amazing shrinking person over in their home working as opposed to in the work site. So especially for those individuals, I say, a call, a check-in call. If your company is a small to medium-sized company, you can do that with your direct reports, right? You can take 15 minutes every week and just do a quick check-in. And I always say that first thing you should be saying to them is, gee, Allison, how are you doing? And if Allison responds by saying, I'm fine, my response is going to be, okay, Allison, let's try this all over again. Allison, how are you really doing? And then we can have a conversation where we're really talking and communicating and being a compassionate leader. And that helps, that is just something that's just going to keep your employees engaged and loving the work that they do.
And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, so true.
I do love like your tone, how you changed to say, Allison, how are you really doing? That to me was so sincere and honest. It's just, how somebody must feel on the other end when you're doing that personally directly to them, or when you're sharing it as advice. That is, it was very simple, but it was clear and powerful.
Yeah. And sometimes people feel, Allison, once again, that they need permission, right? And so to say, you know what, I just want to tell you, I am struggling working from home. How are you feeling? It gives them permission to be able to share.
What do you do when you have people who are supposed to be working together on the same team towards the same goal and they're not communicating properly? How do you try to help facilitate that so that they can get on the same boat together, so they can head in the same direction?
Yeah. Well, sometimes people are just, because they're completely different, they may receive communication differently. And I have plenty of examples that I can use, and I do use, especially when doing an analysis, like a disc analysis on teams, because different people do receive communication and deliver their communication differently. Throw the pandemic on that, and now we're having those communications via Zoom. It just adds a whole different layer to it. But really actually understanding where each person is coming from, what's not working with them, with the team, and spending the time to do that is kind of like peeling back the onion a bit, but it's worthwhile spending the time in doing that. Because there's something somewhere that isn't gelling, and you've got to figure out where that something is.
Yeah. And do you think, kind of combining with what we were saying earlier with some women having like that imposter syndrome, can you combine what's happening? There's all the statistics about the she session right now and the risk to women in the workforce. And I personally believe this is just a temporary phase, and it's too late. The organizations value diversity and they genuinely want it. But I know there's some struggles right now, and that's kind of what I'm trying to unfold with my clients. So if I could borrow your one comment about women with imposter syndromes, then combine it with the Zoom and the not in-person meetings, how do you feel women in corporate America can kind of strive ahead and really, start rebounding, get away from this she session statistics and get back to like 2 feet the way, the pre-session?
Yeah. So first I would say, women have to stand up for themselves and say what it is that they really need in the workplace. And as you said, companies are really, they're all about DE&I right now. I mean, they're so focused on it. So now is the time. Now is the time, especially if you really are a very talented person, which everybody who is listening is, make yourself shine, and then make sure that you are asking for what it is that you really need. So I think women sometimes don't do that. And I've heard of scenarios of women, they're the ones working in the office until 9 o'clock, Everyone else has gone home. Why is that? Why have we allowed ourselves to do that? So we need to put our foot down and say what it is that we really need. I think that is incredibly important. And if you really are suffering from imposter syndrome, then you need help. You need help with somebody like Marcy, who's going to help to coach you to make sure that you are, that you're really addressing what it is that is making you feel in that way. I think that's hugely important.
Yeah. And what's amazing is when you do, whether it's a friend or a coach or whatever, once you start articulating it out loud, you're like, first of all, you usually articulate something that was very powerful in your inner voice. And once you say it out loud, you're like, well, that's not really how I feel. It's like a very strong opinion that doesn't really reflect your values and who you are and your fear and all that. And then you can get layer to another layer. And once you get to the point where you're like, this is actually how I'm feeling, this is what's going on, you realize the ask for help is something very simple. And it's never as complicated as you think it's going to be. And most people want to help.
Oh, totally. And, it's so funny when I was talking to, as I was saying before, the HR professional who really didn't think that she had the skills. And she said to me, well, I don't have, this particular skill. And I said, really? You don't have that skill? Explain to me why you don't have that skill. So it's almost in some ways answering a question with a question, and to put it back to them and say, no, you do have it. You absolutely do have it. So it's a lot of confidence building that others can help them with, that help to really reduce it. I really think I do. And I think it's the women empowering women that really helps.
Yeah. And right now the water is so warm, and there's so many with women wanting to help women, that really there's so much opportunity for everyone. And, it's if you find kind of your circle, it's a great place to play, because then you're cheering each other on.
Exactly.
So Kerry, I'd love to, we love celebrating other women in business. This has been such a great conversation, because you do have such a great approach and perspective on things. If somebody wants to work with you, you mentioned small to mid-size, is like, what's kind of the ideal client, or what type of referrals can we send your way?
Sure. The ideal client, I would say, is 0 to 200 employees, somewhere in that facet, right? I have a niche in healthcare, as I mentioned, but I actually work with all different types of companies, because quite frankly, HR is HR, no matter what company you're in. So just making sure that I understand the business and go in full well knowing what it is, I can help any of them.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us. We enjoyed this conversation, and we genuinely appreciate you joining this platform and sharing your knowledge and mentoring other people that really need this type of support. And especially for those that are in the interest of pivoting. I think you're a great example of, having one profession and pivoting and trying again and just going for it. So we love highlighting women of inspiration.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, this has been a great conversation. Trying to get the music. It's just never playing for me. I don't understand what happens on Zoom.
All right, so we're just going to tell everybody that's live, we have attempted to play some music to finish the show, but we have made it awkward in the intro and the outro. So there'll be no singing or song, but we would like to say thank you.
Thank you so much. Till next time.